I will tell you a story about religious cults, about shitty jobs, and about deep depressions. And I will take this from the very start. Monsieur, please. I grew up in the forest about 200 years ago. Both my parents are teachers, and as a kid, I took for granted that if there was something that I hadn't completely understood in school, of course my parents would help me, and they helped me very much. And this is something that I assumed that all children were in the same situation, that everybody could get help from someone if they needed it. Next slide, please. Thank you. In the area where I grew up, all women were very closely related to me. So my puberty wasn't very exciting. So I decided to move to another city, Teron. So I moved to a big university city and I studied to become a Master of Science in Civil Engineering. One day, somebody knocked on my door, and when I opened it, there was a little girl, a neighbor's girl, and she said, "Johan, in 2 days, I have a math test, and I'm not gonna make it. My parents can't help me, because they don't know any math. My siblings can't help me, and if I don't get any help, I will definitely not make this. Can you please help me?" So we sat down at my kitchen table, and we studied math all evening. And that evening went this fast. I enjoyed it so much to help her that I asked, "Can we do this tomorrow also?" And she thought I was a bit crazy, that I wanted to do this, but she accepted it. So the very next day we sat at the kitchen table again and studied math. This became a regular thing. So a couple of times a week she came to me, we studied math. She started to bring her siblings and her friends, and I had a bunch of kids around the kitchen table. This was not about saving the world. This was about giving my own life a purpose. I enjoyed it so much. One day she rang my door again, and she was crying. And I asked her what had happened, and she said that she had had the second highest grade on her last math exam. And I said, "Oh, you're crying because you didn't get the highest grade?" And she said, No. I didn't think that these grades were for people like me. And with people like me, she meant people who are stupid, because she assumed that if you're not good at math, then you can't be smart. And that is something completely wrong. Math is not something that you're born with. Math is something that you practice, live, and you get help, and you help others, and that's how you learn mathematics. Next slide, please. After that, I grew up. I moved to Stockholm. I got my first job. It was as a wastewater engineer. If you don't know what wastewater is, when you go to the toilet and you flush, that's wastewater. So I was the guy taking care of everything that was flushed. This is not something that I dreamed of when I was a kid. I know it sounds like a very romantic job, but it's not. So I tried another job, please. And I ended up on, I tried many jobs. My last real job was at a big power company as a risk analyst. The average age was about 400 years old. There were only men working there. And the only thing we talked about was how we would join the retirement plan, because everybody wanted to quit. And at this time of my life, I had been trying to find a job that gave me purpose and that meant something, but I couldn't. And I was so depressed. I really hit a very heavy depression while working at this power company. And I started to think backwards. When had I ever done something that truly meant something to me? And I landed in when I have tutored these children around the kitchen table. That made sense. It made me so happy, it made me so joyful. So I decided to do the very same thing, but in a much larger level. First thing I needed was somewhere to be. So I went to Patro, different schools all over Stockholm, and I said like, "Hey, my name is Johan, can I please borrow a classroom in the evenings when the school is empty?" The only thing that I ask for return is that you allow all children, not just the children at your school, like all children to come to this to this classroom. The first three schools contacted the Ministry of Education and said, there is a young man called Johan who is probably representing a religious cult, trying to recruit teenagers by offering free tutoring in mathematics. And they called me up and asked me, do you have a secret religious cult? And I said, well, if it's secret, I can't really tell you, right? But the last school that I visited, they let me borrow a classroom. Then I had somewhere to be. Then I went out to all the schools that I could find, and I talked to the students, and I said, hey guys, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, between 5 and 7, I'm gonna be in this classroom. You guys are welcome. It's for free. I'm very good at math, and I'm even better at explaining it. And then it was time for the premiere, and I was so nervous that nobody would turn up. And actually, it almost became true. One boy came, and I jumped him, and we studied math all evening. He was so pleased that he came back the very next day. But the next day, he brought his friend. Then I had 2 students. And day by day by day, they increased in numbers. After a while, it was me and 25 students. Then I needed to multiply. So I went out to the Institute of Technology. I handed out flyers, I put up posters, I talked to the students, and I recruited volunteers. Next slide, please. And it started to look something like this. It was me and a bunch of volunteers with so many students. And after a while, I wasn't needed in this classroom any longer. So I went to another place in the suburbs of Stockholm. And I borrowed a classroom, recruited volunteers, started up there. Then I started to spread it all over Stockholm, and I started to spread it all over Sweden. Next slide, please. And the only thing that the volunteers are getting in return for doing this is the love from the children. One of my senior voluntary workers, once I asked him after his first math class, or math lab, I asked him, so Leif, did you enjoy it? Did this make you happy? Do you want to continue? And he said, Johan, I'm 72 years old, and I have never done drugs. But I bet this is what it feels like. He was so high on adrenaline this evening. Why? Because he had retired, and after a while, he had nothing to do. And when he met these children again, he felt that he had a purpose in life, that he could give something, and also receive something. He received so much appreciation, so much love, and this is why my volunteers continue to do this. Please. So today, we operate in about 36 cities in Sweden. We have 7,000 kids who come every single week and study with us, have about 700 volunteers. But, all right, sorry, next slide, please. We have a lot of immigrants in Sweden. A lot of refugees have taken shelter in Sweden. Thing is, many of these don't have the same level of education as their peers in Sweden. So I have addressed them because something needs to be done so they can catch up. About 50% of my students have immigrant background. 16% of all my students in Stockholm, they speak Somali with their parents. And they are 100% sweethearts. We have never had any incidents during these math classes. Tadag. All right, this won't make any sense to you because it's in Swedish, but it's a little note and a box of chocolate that I got from my students. It basically said, thank you for taking me from from a grade where you didn't pass to the second highest grade. And you have not only increased my scores, you have increased my confidence. And this is what it's so much about. In Sweden, at least, there is a myth that says that if you're good at math, you're automatically intelligent. And there's so many children walking around believing that they're not smart, just because they haven't had the right support or education around them. And on the very last line it says, Johan is a very cool person also, but that's not relevant. All right, so I didn't just want to help the students that came to my math class. I wanted to help all students. So I recorded about 1,000 videos where I solve and explain mathematics. I wrote theory, I wrote questions like problems, and I posted everything online on a webpage called Matteboken on .se. It's basically translated into math book. About 500,000 kids, or 50% of all children in Sweden between 9 and 19 years old, study online every single month with this page. The video has been watched about 8 or 9 million times, and they're also available in both English and Arabic. Not the Romanian yet, sorry for that. Everything is for free for the kids. We will never charge money from them. But we will charge money from the people or companies that benefit from this. So we have huge companies in Sweden sponsoring us. Companies that needs a lot of engineers, banks, accountant offices and so on. Ericsson and ABB, maybe you know, maybe NCC. Danske Bank is a Danish bank that operates a lot in Sweden. But the main reason why we can do this so efficiently is because we are so cheap. We borrow classrooms for free. The volunteers are paid in love. And for 1 year of free tutoring for one child, we need to raise about €6. And in Swedish standards, this is very, very low. Please. All right, so in 2000, I started Mattecentrum, which my organization is called, in 2008. In 2011, Mattecentrum had a bunch of volunteers, so many students, so much publicity. We won every award. We had so many sponsors. Everything went well, and I was super bored. I need some excitement in my life. I need some setbacks. So I packed my bag. I went to Copenhagen, capital of Denmark. I started the very same organization. It's called Mattecentrum. And I scaled up all over Denmark also. And today we have about 500,000 kids in Denmark also. So in total, Denmark, Sweden, we help 1 million students or kids every single month. Please. And then I read a report from the EU Commission that year 2020, Europe is gonna lack 1 million coders. 1 million coding jobs that we can't fulfill because we don't have the right education. At the same time, so many young people are walking around in Sweden unemployed because they don't have the education and they want a job. So the industry wants to employ, the students, the teenagers or young people want a job, but they don't match. And we need to solve this problem. So I started another organization called Mattecentrum, where we teach kids to code. Basically, it's set up in the very same manner as Mattecentrum. The ambition is that we will have introduced or taught about 100,000 kids coding until the year 2020. So if Romania wants some of these 1 million jobs, you have to get going if you're not already there. All right, that's my main organizations. I'm gonna tell you a couple of examples on how I have worked with my organization, because the first year I made a list of 1,000 companies and I called them and said, hey, I have a dream that I want to build an organization where all students can study math for free. Will you sponsor me? I made 1,000 calls, literally 1,000 calls, and almost nobody would give me any money. One person, he went the furthest. He listened to me, and I thought it was going well. And then he said, Johan, this is probably the most stupid fucking idea I have ever heard. And he hung up on me. And that was like an arrow straight to my heart, that my potential sponsor thought it was the most stupid idea that he have ever heard. But I continued, so I had to work smart. All right, so I'm going to tell you about a formulary. A formulary is a little textbook that contains all formulas, all constants, all graphs, everything that you need in order to do science or math or anything. And when I started senior high school, I was handed one by school. Today, although we have the highest tax pressure in the world in Sweden, we can't afford to give these formularies to the children any longer, which really upsets me. So I took my own formulary. I didn't copy it, that would be illegal. I wrote everything off. It's a small difference. And I created an app, and I published it for free. This was downloaded about many hundred thousand times, and after just like 2 days, it was the most popular educational app on App Store in Sweden, and it's filled with backlinks to my organization also. So everybody who downloaded it knew also where they could find free education in mathematics. And this is one way how I promote myself. I create an app and I get constant stream of students coming to my organization. This slide, if you can see it, is 400 students queuing in front of a tent. This is the main square in Stockholm, where all the junkies and the drug dealers hang out. The day before the national exam in mathematics in Sweden is when it's as most interesting to actually study mathematics. So what I did is that I put up these big tents, and I make a huge math class, and I invite 400 students, 100 volunteers, and we study math together for 5 hours. Basically, it's just like one of my normal math classes, but much bigger. The media loves this. We get so much media attention, and media is something that I've always had to work with, because I have never had any money to pay for promotion or advertisement. Politicians. I love working with politicians. Whatever. I heard there's the former Minister of Education from Moldova here. I wish you were president. Anyway, so what I did was that I collected all the email addresses from all the politicians in the Swedish parliament. And I sent them an email and I said, hey people in the parliament, can you solve this simple equation? If you can solve it, then you're more than welcome to come as a guest volunteer to my organization. If you're not able to solve it, then you can come as a student. All political parties in Sweden at that time came as volunteers. Nobody came as students. But what they did afterwards was that they went back to the parliament and they blogged about it. They Facebooked about it. They tweeted about it. And they talked to the people working with education in their party about it. And over the course of 1 week, I had started a political awareness about Mattecentrum, my organization, something that would benefit me very much in the future. Next slide, please. This makes no sense to you, but this dude is in the Swedish parliament, and he won a contest because every year there is nothing that I care less about how good, who is best at mathematics in the Swedish parliament. But the media loves this, so I do an annual competition where I elect who is best at mathematics, and we get so many headlines. This is the main paper in Sweden, and every year they write about this, and we create news in order to brand ourselves. Next slide, please. All right, so this is a page from Donald Duck magazine. Anybody here that knows who Zlatan Ibrahimovic is? All right, a couple of you guys. It's Sweden's most famous soccer player ever. And so I called up Donald Duck magazine and I said, why don't you make a full episode about mathematics where Donald and his nephews need mathematics to get out of their trouble? And they said, well, that's a brilliant idea. And on the middle spread, they wrote
so much about Mattecentrum. And there's only been one Swedish person in Swedish Donald Duck before, and that's Zlatan Ibrahimovic. And now there has been two. And because I said they would make a cartoon out of me. And since I'm a redhead, I thought they would make me a fox, and I'm also very foxy. But they did like very weird cartoon. I'm much prettier in real life. But I know that Zlatan is very proud of that he and me has been there. But also, once again, an example on how we get advertisement or promotion for free. Next slide, please. This one we won't watch. This is, we do have them. This is a Swedish famous hip-hop artist who solves a math problem. This is, after you watch this, you probably know less math than you did before. But it's very entertaining and it's very funny. And these are our commercials. I have asked very famous people in Sweden to solve a math problem. I posted it on YouTube and I write, do you want to learn more mathematics? Go to this website. And the clips are watched hundreds of thousands of times. These children love them. They send them to each other. They show them for the teacher and so on. This is how we promote ourselves. And that's the thing. You can start something good, but if no one have ever heard about it, then it's for nothing, because you need to get a spread. And I never wanted to help just one child. I wanted to make a social change in Sweden. I wanted to change the way of how children learn mathematics. So, you probably know this company. 25% of all people, is that too much? That is too much. Sorry. All right, no, not 25%. 400,000 people in Sweden go every single Saturday to McDonald's. These people mainly come from the most uneducated families. And I wanted to reach them. So I contacted McDonald's in Sweden and I said, can I please borrow your restaurants in 30 cities on a Saturday, and I will transform them into math classes with volunteers. So all children who come and eat at your restaurant can also study math there for free. And they loved the idea. So we did this day all over Sweden. And we got so many more students the Monday after that. And we got the right students. We got the students that needed it the most. Very happy about that collaboration. Next slide, please. All right, another example how we promote ourselves. When I was a kid, before internet or electricity, I used to eat porridge at the kitchen table. And I always read on the milk box. So I called up the main producer of milk and I said, what if I write some really fun math problems, and you can post it on your milk boxes, and also write a little bit about my organization. Will you do this for free? And they said, of course. And that's the thing. If you don't ask, you will never get anything. Right, Alexandra? Yeah. But not everybody. I mean, now I give the examples of everybody that said yes. There's plenty who have said no. Next slide, please. Yeah, once again in Swedish. Sorry for this. So I wrote a book in 2014 about social entrepreneurship, and the title was The Most Stupid Fucking Idea I've Ever Heard. Actually, the company that this guy worked at, the company is today one of our sponsors. I made a little dance at my office the day they signed. Next slide, please. In 2013, I had twin daughters. I also became a single twin father. And at the same time, I ran Mattecentrum in Sweden. I ran Mattecentrum in Denmark. I had just started Mattecentrum. I was doing a lot of public speaking and the consultancy works, and had 2 tiny babies, and my family didn't live close. So my daughters came with me wherever I went. Actually, I gave a presentation once, and the audience was laughing, and I thought, wow, I must be so funny. But they were laughing because I was changing the diaper at the same time I was speaking. This lasted for about a year, and after a year, I crashed. My head was spinning. There was no more to give. So I had to leave all my organizations. 2 weeks later, the Swedish Prime Minister was giving his most important speech of the year. And he said he had realized that I was quitting, and he gave, like, the first 10 minutes he talked about my work. And that is probably one of the most proud days in my life. I was super happy to end my organization that day. Next slide, please. So today, I'm feeling better, much better. Still spinning in my head though. I write book about computational thinking. I'm gonna do a little workshop after lunch about this also. Computational thinking, basically it's a problem-solving method about, basically you can say how to think like a coder, how to solve problems smart, which is very useful when you're to become a coder. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I will take another one. All right. And I'm sitting in a lot of boards also. The Swedish Red Cross, the Swedish Board of Education, but also I started a couple of other organizations. It turned out when my daughters, they're now 3.5 years old, when they were 2, one of my daughters, you guys look me in the eyes right now, one of my daughters, she didn't. And she didn't talk. And when I called her name, she didn't react. If you Google this, you will get about 1 million hits on autism. That is quite heavy for any parent. But I'm crazy. And one of my skills is that I always get my will through. So I studied everything about autism. I read so much about which help and how I could work with my daughter. And I put together a program for her. And she's developing so fast. Last August, she said her first word. She called me mommy. Fair enough. Today, she can use about 400 words. And that's last August, less than a year. She has 400 words. 6 weeks ago, she learned how to put 2 words together, like saying her name, Vera, and cookie, maybe. It's very popular. And 1 week ago, she learned how to put 3 words together. If she continues developing this in this time, in this rate, she will get her first Nobel Prize when she's 10. Which is okay. I always said 15. 10 is okay. The problem is that I'm very privileged. I'm not wealthy, but I have some money. I have a good education. I know how to get out there, make my voice heard. I know how to get my will through. Many people don't. And there is no help for these people in Sweden. And that is not okay, not in a democracy. That is not fair. So I started a new organization called Young Autism, where we give free rehabilitation to children with autism. I'm not going to talk so much about that, but I'm also going to, I started it, I gave it to some other people, and they can continue the work. So what I'm working on right now is that children with autism never get invited to birthday parties, because they act differently, and people don't know how to cope with that. And that sucks. That is not okay. All kids should go to a birthday party. So I called up the Royal Opera in Sweden, in Stockholm, and I said, hey guys, can I borrow your whole building in November this year? Because I want to throw a big birthday party for 300 kids with autism. So that's what I'm planning on working with right now. After that, I don't know what my next problem or what my next organization will be. I brought a couple of copies of this book, the Curly Bracket book, that I will also talk about this afternoon. If anybody want to have a look at it or buy it, it's going to be over here. It's in English. It's in English, not Swedish. I want to say thank you to everybody here, and thank you to Alexandra for bringing me here. You have been very attentive. Mulțumesc.